I had moved in with my son, Tom, and his wife, Sarah, after selling my house. It was a quiet transaction. A smaller life. My neighborhood had gotten loud. Children moved away, fences leaned. I told myself I didn't need so many rooms. So many drawers filled with things no one else would want. Tom and Sarah were gracious. They needed help with their 2 children, and I had energy left. When I handed Tom the cashier's check for the down payment on their new house, he held it like it was breakable. "You didn't have to," he said. But I had. That was the point. I'd raised him to have a good start, and this, I thought, was the last nudge. They gave me a room on the ground floor, just off the laundry hallway. "It's private," Sarah said. The window faced the side fence. She'd placed a little vase on the nightstand with silk lavender. The bed was low and firm. I liked it, or told myself I did. On the surface, everything worked. We had family dinners. Grilled chicken, sometimes pasta. The kids fought over who got to sit in my lap. I took them to the park, tied their shoelaces. In the evenings, I folded towels and watched game shows with the dog curled at my feet. I kept my books in a small crate beside the recliner. One evening I heard Sarah mention to Tom, "She's starting to clutter the living room." I told myself she was just tired. Then one Thursday I passed the stairwell and paused when I heard her voice upstairs. Muffled, light with laughter, then more serious. "She doesn't need that much space. Her room could be a home office, eventually." Eventually. I stood still, one hand on the banister. They didn't know I was there. Or maybe they did and didn't care. My stomach fluttered. A small, strange hollowing. Later I made tea. Sat at the kitchen table long after the house went quiet. The dog came to sit beside me. I ran my hand over his ears and stared out the window, wondering when I had stopped being part of the plan. After that, the house settled into a new kind of silence. Not cold, just less warm. The children still rushed to me when they got home, but Sarah no longer joined us in the driveway. I started cooking more. I knew how Tom liked his eggs, how the children liked their toast. I stocked the pantry with their favorites: almond milk, the expensive kind of cereal, snack bars in neat rows. I folded dish towels into thirds instead of halves. Little things. No one asked me to. But no one thanked me either. One afternoon I picked the kids up from school. The drop-off line was long, the sun too hot for October. When we got back, Sarah was in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone. I opened the fridge to put away their lunchboxes. "Next time," she said, "just leave them in the car. They're old enough to carry their own." Smiled. Of course. Tom worked longer hours now. Sarah said he was tired. Understood. I kept the children quiet after dinner. I took to reading in my room. My books no longer belonged on the coffee table. Sarah had asked if I could keep the space feeling open. So I moved them, one by one, back to the little crate by my recliner. A stack of stories no one else wanted. When I offered to visit my friend Marlene in Fort Collins for a weekend, Tom frowned. "You get tired easily, Mom. Why don't you just take it easy at home?" He nodded. Course. Stayed. Sarah bought new throw pillows for the living room, textured ones rough to the touch. My old ones disappeared. I didn't ask where. Seemed too small to mention. One morning I reached for my tea mug and found it on a high shelf. The stool had been moved. Asked Sarah about it. "Oh, the kids kept tripping on it," she said. "We put it in the garage." She didn't offer to help me get it back. So I fetched it myself. The garage was cold, and the stool had a spider under one leg. I wiped it clean and carried it in, but the next morning it was gone again. That Saturday I heard Tom and Sarah whispering in the kitchen. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I stood just outside the hallway. "She's not helpless," Tom said. "But she's slowing down." Sarah sighed. "I just need space, Tom. My own space. That room could be my office. You know how cramped I get working upstairs." "She paid for this house," he said, quieter. "Well, she's not on the deed." The silence after that rang in my ears longer than the words. Later that evening I sat with my grandson on the porch. We watched the neighbor's cat slink across the lawn. He was quiet for a while, then asked, "Grandma, do you live with us because you have nowhere else to go?" Smiled. "No, sweetheart. I live here because I thought it would be nice." He nodded, satisfied. But something inside me cracked, not from the question but from the fact that it was so easily asked. As though the idea of me being rootless was ordinary. I stayed up late that night, staring at the ceiling of my small room. The walls were white and clean. No photos. No marks from the children's hands. Just blankness. Sarah had picked the bedding. Gray with a faint geometric pattern. It was modern. Didn't look like me. I remembered a time years ago, when Tom scraped his knee on the sidewalk and cried in my lap. I held him while his breath hitched and he whispered, "Don't ever go away, Mom." Now, his daughter wondered why I was still here. In the following weeks, Sarah started using my room during the day. I noticed the chair pushed back, my reading lamp tilted. Once, her laptop was still open on the dresser. "She just needed quiet to take a call," Tom explained. "It's hard upstairs with the kids." Course. Quiet. One morning, I found a set of fabric swatches on my nightstand. Muted greens and soft creams. When I asked Sarah about them, she said, "Just looking at new design ideas. It's not decided." But I wasn't asked. The children still hugged me goodnight. Still showed me their drawings. But the drawings no longer included me. They were of their school friends, their parents, the dog. One even had a stick figure with Sarah's mother labeled, "Grandma." I mentioned it gently. "Oh," Sarah said. "We had her over last week while you were out." The kids just got confused. I hadn't gone anywhere that week. I had been in the house every day. In November, Tom brought home a new desk for Sarah. Oak, polished, large. Too large for their upstairs nook. He asked if he could store it in my room. Just for a few days. It never left. I made myself smaller. I kept to the corners. I did not ask for anything more than what they gave. The dog, old and sweet, still curled beside me. Sometimes I thought he was the only one who remembered I had a name. One night, while folding laundry, I overheard Sarah on the phone. She was laughing. No, she doesn't mind. She likes feeling useful. Honestly, it keeps her occupied. The word occupied stung more than it should have. Like I was an idle mind needing distraction. Later, I opened the drawer where I kept my things. My letters, my receipts, a small envelope of savings. I sat at the edge of the bed and took out a photo of Tom as a boy, holding a pine cone, smiling at me. His eyes were wide, trusting. I hadn't changed. I was still that mother. But something around me had. That night, I dreamed of my old garden. Hydrangeas under the window, the rusted watering can, the bench Owen built before his hands began to tremble. In the dream, the house was waiting for me. Not new, not perfect, just mine. When I woke up, the room was quiet. A thin shaft of light fell across the desk. The vase of silk lavender was gone. December came quickly. Sarah hung a minimalist wreath on the front door. White ribbon, eucalyptus, no red. She said it felt cleaner, more modern. The children wrote letters to Santa. I helped them seal the envelopes and added stamps when no one was looking. I offered to make cookies, the kind Tom loved when he was little. Molasses and ginger with cracked sugar tops. Sarah told me she was on a clean eating plan and preferred if we didn't have too many processed treats around. I made a half batch. The children devoured them before dinner. Sarah said nothing, just wiped the counter with a little too much pressure. One evening, the family gathered around the fireplace. Sarah passed around cocoa in matching mugs she had ordered online. Mine had no marshmallows. "Thought you'd prefer it plain," she said, not unkindly, but without asking. Tom pulled up a travel site on his tablet. "We've been thinking about a family trip," he said. "Something big. Something special." Sarah leaned in. "Japan." The children squealed. "We want to see cherry blossoms. Can we ride the bullet train? I want sushi every day." Smiled. "I've always wanted to go," I said quietly. They didn't reply. Over the next few days, I watched them research flights, scroll through blogs, compare rail passes. Sarah ordered guidebooks. Tom consulted his coworker who had lived in Osaka. I offered tips from an old friend who'd traveled there. "Oh, that's helpful," Sarah said once, her eyes on her phone. When I asked if they needed help booking anything, Tom said they had it covered. "Of course," I replied. I still imagined I would be going. They had said it was a family trip. I was part of the family. I helped Sarah choose neck pillows online. Ergonomic, supportive. She asked me to look at suitcase reviews. "You're good at that kind of thing," she said. Smiled. Felt like being useful again. One morning, I found a sheet of printed itineraries on the kitchen table. I scanned the columns, dates, places, ticket numbers. My name wasn't there. But I didn't ask. Waited. I told myself they were still finalizing plans. That maybe I would be surprised. That maybe kindness still had a place. Then one night, Tom knocked gently on my door. He stepped in, holding his mug. No cocoa this time, just water. "Mom," he said, "we've been talking. About the trip." He nodded. "Put my book down. We decided it's better if you don't come. Not because we don't want you there, it's just... the flight's long. A lot of walking. You get tired." Sarah stood behind him in the doorway. She didn't speak. Tom smiled, soft and small. "It'll be more relaxing for you to stay here. Watch the house. Keep things safe." The dog looked up from his place at my feet. I reached down and ran my fingers through his fur. "I understand," I said. Tom exhaled, relieved. "Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd get it." He left the room. Sarah lingered. Her eyes moved over the desk, the stool by the window, the suitcase I'd brought out last week. Then she nodded, just once, and turned away. I sat in the silence after they left. The kind that comes not with shock, but with confirmation. I had suspected. But now I knew. It wasn't that they didn't think I could manage the trip. It was that they never imagined I'd be part of it. They didn't forget me. They excluded me. Decided the trip was better, lighter without me. And instead of saying that, they wrapped it in concern. I didn't cry. My hands folded neatly in my lap. Later that evening, I helped my granddaughter pack her sketchpad. She asked if I had ever been on a plane for more than 10 hours. "Yes," I said. "Did it hurt your legs?" "Not more than usual." She nodded, thoughtful. "I wish you were coming." "I know," I said. I tucked a small package into the side of her suitcase. 4 little candies in a tin. Lavender pastilles. I had saved them from a gift basket years ago. She wouldn't know what they were, not at first. But someday she might remember. That night, I washed the dinner dishes slowly. The kitchen smelled like garlic and lemon. The children had left their socks under the table again. Picked them up. I wiped the chairs. Tom and Sarah talked in the living room. I heard the hum of their voices, the occasional laugh. I didn't walk in. I finished my chores and returned to my room. Before bed, I opened my suitcase and took out the guidebook I had ordered for myself months earlier. The pages were still crisp. I flipped to the cherry blossom section, then closed it and set it in the drawer. Outside, wind pressed against the windows. The dog snored at my feet. I reached under the bed and pulled out a small envelope I kept hidden, a habit from years ago. Inside was a folded printout, my passport renewal confirmation, a list of emergency contacts, and a sticky note with the phrase, "Why not you?" scrawled in my own hand. I hadn't looked at it in months. I read it again, slowly. Then I put it back and turned off the light. The next morning I walked to the mailbox as I always did. The air was cold and dry, and the grass wore a brittle coat of frost. The dog followed me, slow on his old legs. Sarah had mentioned boarding him while they were gone, said he'd get anxious without them. I hadn't replied. Inside the box, nestled between a flyer for roof repair and a supermarket circular, was a plain white envelope. My name typed. No return address. I brought it inside and opened it at the kitchen table. A travel agency logo peeked out from the top. I recognized it. Sarah had shown me their site once when choosing seats. Inside were 4 unused airline tickets. still in the original agency sleeve. Their names printed neatly: Tom, Sarah, and the children. The departure date: next week. The flight to Tokyo I had heard them mention in whispers, though they no longer spoke of it openly in front of me. I stared at the tickets. All were economy class. No upgrades, no wheelchair codes, no accommodations. They hadn't purchased extra assistance. No notes about health limitations. They hadn't worried about the walking, or the duration, or my stamina. They had worried about my presence. I picked up the phone and called the airline. A polite woman answered, cheerful, unaware of the weight her words would carry. Yes, she confirmed. Those tickets haven't been activated. They were cancelled last week. Looks like the reservation was changed. Different names now, different dates. They must have rebooked elsewhere. My hand tightened around the receiver. So these tickets are invalid? Yes, ma'am. Just paper now. I thanked her and hung up. They had bought 4 new tickets. Not 5. Not 6. Just enough for themselves. It wasn't that I was too tired to travel. I wasn't included. That evening I sat in my room and took the envelope back out. I spread the tickets across the desk like playing cards. The names faced up, shining under the lamp. No mention of me. The children ran past the hallway, laughing. Sarah told them to quiet down. I heard Tom adjusting the thermostat. I sat still. Later, Sarah knocked lightly. Do you need anything from the store? I turned in my chair. No, thank you. She lingered, glancing at the tickets. Where'd you get those? The mail. She nodded once. Her eyes narrowed, almost imperceptibly. Odd they were sent here. Yes, I said. Odd. That night, I found my old passport in the locked drawer beneath my nightstand. The photograph showed a younger woman. Slight smile, hair darker, eyes steady. The expiration date still far away. I placed it beside the envelope. The next morning I opened my bank app. I'd been careful with what remained after the down payment. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I scrolled through the transactions. The last withdrawal had been for Sarah's birthday. Floral arrangement, spa certificate, a card with a pressed violet. I studied the balance. Then I opened a new browser tab and searched for flights to Mexico City, a place I had once wanted to see. Bright colors, markets, warm stone streets. I clicked through options. Prices were high but not impossible. I didn't book. Not yet. But I noted the details. In the hallway, the children argued about socks. Sarah's voice followed, sharp but tired. Tom's footsteps moved overhead. Made tea. When the kettle clicked off, I returned to the kitchen table and spread the guidebook open to a map. I traced the path from the airport to the Zocalo, then to a small hotel with an inner courtyard I had once read about in a magazine at the dentist's office. That night, I told the dog we'd be going away for a little while. He blinked at me, then lowered his head back to the floor. In the morning I called the hotel and asked about availability. They had 1 room open for the week of the trip. Quiet courtyard view, the man said. Breakfast included. Gave my name. I didn't tell anyone in the house. Later, while Sarah was out and Tom was working, I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the stack of forms Sarah kept for school permissions and tax papers. I saw her handwriting often. Neat, square, impersonal. I pulled out a blank envelope from the drawer and wrote a note on a plain sheet of paper. I'll be away during your trip. No need to check in. The house will be fine. No signature. I left it tucked under the tickets. That evening, Sarah entered the kitchen, glanced at the desk and froze. She picked up the envelope, read the note, then turned to me. Where are you going? Somewhere they said I couldn't. She stared for a second. Then she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Well, she said. Just let us know if you need anything. I won't, I replied. That night, I sat in the garden with a throw blanket over my knees and looked up at the stars. The air smelled like dry leaves and distant chimney smoke. I held the guidebook in my lap. The dog leaned against my leg. I thought of Owen. How he used to circle places in travel magazines and leave them on the nightstand for me to find. We'll go here someday, he would say. But some day had passed. I closed the book and stood. Inside I began packing that I packed quietly. One bag soft-sided. Navy blue with worn seams. I rolled 2 dresses, a pair of sandals, walking shoes, and the shawl my sister gave me before she passed. I tucked my passport in the outer pocket, along with a printed itinerary and the confirmation number from the hotel in Mexico City. The flight was booked, paid for in full. I had used miles where I could, points where I couldn't. I cancelled the unused tickets. The ones they'd left behind. Called the agency, gave the names. No refund, I was told. Non-transferable, non-refundable. I asked them to flag the profiles, mark the error. Just a quiet administrative note. A digital fingerprint of something not quite right. Then I opened a new savings account. Separate, unlinked, unshared. I moved the rest of my money there. What little was left after the down payment, the gifts, the groceries, the school supplies, the houseplant Sarah had insisted would brighten the foyer. It had died in August. I went to the post office and asked them to hold my mail. Temporarily, I said. A week. Maybe more. The clerk didn't ask questions. He stamped a small receipt and handed it to me without looking up. Back home, I watered the plants and left a note for Meg, my neighbor. Water every 3 days. Don't touch the orchid. It prefers solitude. She would understand. When I told her I was going away, she looked up from her porch chair and said, "Finally. Going somewhere?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Somewhere they said I couldn't." I didn't elaborate. The morning of the flight, I woke before dawn. The house was dark, the hallways still. I made a pot of coffee, left it on warm. Sarah had a yoga class. Tom was on a call schedule. The children had a school field trip. Their departure would be noisy and distracted. I planned mine for silence. The dog followed me to the door. I knelt, pressed my forehead to his. "You're in charge," I whispered. He wagged once, then settled near the heating vent. Loyal to the end. Outside, the sky was the color of dishwater, but the air was sharp with promise. I walked 2 blocks to the shuttle stop. The driver, a young woman with cropped hair and a gold tooth, offered to lift my bag. "I've got it," I said. The airport was half empty. Quiet Monday. My gate was tucked at the end of a terminal. I sat near a window and watched a man in a safety vest wave orange cones toward nowhere. They began boarding at 9:10. 1 ticket. 1 bag. No one to ask if I'd remembered my medication. No one to tell me not to tire myself. No one to suggest I stay home and rest. As the plane ascended, I looked out the window. The clouds flattened into gray lace. I thought of the children waking up, eating cereal, asking for juice. I thought of Sarah walking past my room, noticing the bed made, the surfaces cleared, the closet empty except for a single coat hanger. I imagined her standing in the doorway, the note in her hand, rereading it like it might change. I didn't leave a forwarding address. In Mexico City, the air was warm and sweet with diesel and jasmine. The taxi driver spoke English with a lilt. "First time?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "First time anywhere alone." He nodded as if that made sense. The hotel was modest, with blue tile floors and a courtyard that smelled of limes. I checked in, left my bag on the bed and walked to the street. Vendors were setting up shirts, dolls, sweets in plastic bags. I bought a pair of earrings from a woman with soft hands and silver in her hair. "For your daughter?" she asked. "No," I said. "For me." I found a cafe with rickety chairs and strong coffee. I wrote in my notebook for an hour. Nothing dramatic. Just small lists. Things I saw, things I didn't miss, things I didn't say. That evening, I took a photo of the sunset, orange smudged across stone rooftops. I didn't send it to anyone. Back at the hotel, I checked my phone. Missed calls, Tom 2, Sarah 1, unknown 1. Messages. "Where are you? Mom, this isn't funny. The sprinklers aren't working. Are you mad at us?" Then a voicemail. Tom's voice strained. "You're overreacting. Why are you doing this to us?" I didn't respond. I wasn't angry. I was just done performing gratitude for being ignored. The next morning I met June. She was from Toronto, 73, traveling alone. We shared a bench outside a museum. She offered me a mango slice from a plastic bag. "They only see you as a role until you step outside it," she said. He nodded. She leaned closer. "They're not panicking because you're gone. They're panicking because you're free." That night I walked past a bookstore and saw a poster in the window. "La mujer que se fue sola." The woman who left alone. I stepped inside. Bought the book. Didn't read it. I just wanted to own it. I took small steps. Breakfast on a patio, a walk through an artisan market, a photograph of a flower I couldn't name. I wore the earrings. Painted my nails. It wasn't a reinvention. It was a remembering. Back in my room, I placed the guidebook in the drawer beside the bed. I made a note on the hotel stationery. Day 3. I'm awake. Not tired. Awake. I folded it, placed it under the pillow. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Tom. "You win. I didn't know you had this in you. Sorry. I just always saw you as backup. Turns out, you were something else entirely." I didn't cry. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked to the mirror and placed the earrings in my ears. They caught the light just barely. A new message arrived. Photo. Ellie's drawing. Me in a sun hat, holding a coffee cup, looking into the distance. She doesn't wait to be invited anymore. She just goes. I stared at it. Then, slowly, I whispered to myself. I wasn't weak. I just let them believe I needed permission to live. I don't anymore. I folded the photo and placed it between the pages of the guidebook. Then I stepped outside. The street was loud and bright. The air smelled like oranges and charcoal. And I walked, steady and unseen, to be why the 4th day. The messages shifted. The polite confusion gave way to worry, then to blame. "Mom, are you okay? Just tell us where you are. Please. You didn't say anything. You scared the kids." Sarah's voice crept in too. Shorter messages. "Harper. We can't keep explaining this to people. You're making this harder than it has to be. This isn't like you." I let them pile up. One afternoon, while I sat beneath a jacaranda tree in a quiet plaza near the Coyoacán district, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. I waited until the cafe closed before listening. Tom's voice was low, full of tension. "Mom, I don't know what's going on, but you've made your point. Can we talk now? You're hurting everyone." Played it twice. Then deleted it. That evening I found a bookstore tucked between 2 apartments. Inside, the air was thick with dust and leather. I bought a journal and began writing again. Not out of pain but out of clarity. Not a letter. Not a confrontation. Just a record of facts. Day 1. Departure, silence, release. Day 2. Mango with June, street musicians. Hotel clerk said bienvenida like he meant it. Day 3. I smiled at nothing for 10 minutes straight. Day 4, they started to panic. It became a ritual. Each morning, I sat at the same corner cafe with a metal chair that rocked slightly. The waiter began to recognize me. "Senora," he greeted with a tilt of his head. Each day, I wrote something that only I needed to understand. Day 5. Freedom is not revenge. That evening I received a new email. Subject line. Urgent. It was from Tom. "I just want to know if you're safe. I don't care where. Please just tell me you're okay. You don't have to come home." No signature. Just that. Still I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty. But because they hadn't asked if I was happy. Just if I was compliant. If I was still performing the version of me they preferred. Quiet, available, grateful. The next morning I visited a museum with June. We stood before a painting of a woman walking away from a burning field. June said, "I think that's what liberation looks like." I said, "I think it's what it feels like." We didn't linger. Later over lunch she asked, "When do you go back?" Shrugged. "I don't know that I do." "You mean you'll stay?" "No," I said. "I mean I won't go back the same." She raised her glass to that. That night, in my hotel room, I received another voicemail, this time from Sarah. You've made your point, Marilyn. But you've also caused a lot of stress. The kids are confused. I'm trying to keep things calm, but this isn't helping. I thought we had a good thing going. Good thing. I turned off the phone. The room was quiet, clean, small. I could hear the hum of traffic below, the occasional bark of a dog, a child calling to someone across the alley. The city felt alive in a way that didn't expect anything of me. I wrote again. Day 6. They're not worried about me. They're worried about control. I opened the guidebook to a page about Oaxaca. Small city. Markets. Slow buses. Real food. I circled a date. The following morning, I boarded a bus with a paper ticket and a bottle of water. The ride was long. The windows fogged at the edges. I watched the landscape change. Flat to green to brick-colored hills. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. In Oaxaca, the air smelled of corn and smoke. I rented a room above a bakery. The walls were pink. The bedspread was faded blue. I loved it immediately. June sent me a photo from Mexico City. Her with a new friend, holding a fried plantain in each hand. I sent her a photo of my street. 3 dogs asleep on a warm sidewalk, their bodies tangled like roots. Tom called twice that evening. I didn't answer. He left a message. This doesn't feel like you, Mom. I'm starting to wonder if something's wrong. Well, he always confused change with illness. I went to the market that night and bought a scarf the color of rust. I wore it wrapped high around my neck like a statement. The woman at the stall said, "You look strong." "I am," I said. Day 7. They still don't understand. That's not my job anymore. I walked the narrow streets until sunset. The sky turned orange, then red, then ash. I passed an old woman sweeping the threshold of her shop. She nodded. I nodded back. No words. Just recognition. That night I watched a festival from my window. Candles, laughter, children running in circles. The rhythm of a band carried up to my room. I leaned on the windowsill and let the sound fill me. A text from Sarah. The water heater isn't working. Did you reset something before you left? I didn't reply. Another message, hours later. I just don't get it. After everything we've done. You're making us look bad. There it was. The truth finally surfaced. Not concern. Not love. Image. Reputation. They had lost control of the story. I was no longer in the narrative they'd built. The grateful elder, the obedient guest, the woman who stayed silent. Now I was a gap. An unanswered question. An absence too large to explain. I went to sleep with the windows open. A breeze carried in the scent of sweet bread and cold stone. Day 8. My silence is louder than their apology would have been. In the morning I went to a small church with a courtyard. No mass. Just open doors. I sat in the last pew and closed my eyes. I didn't pray. I listened. I don't know how long I stayed. When I rose to leave, I felt taller. Outside, children were playing tag with a green balloon. I watched until it popped. Then I walked on Day 9. I stopped checking the messages. I turned off notifications. Set the phone to airplane mode. Left it charging on the desk and walked out with nothing in my hands but a map folded into quarters and a 50-peso note tucked inside my sleeve. In Oaxaca, the mornings were soft with mist. I walked to the plaza, bought tamales wrapped in banana leaves, and watched the pigeons scatter with every step of a passing child. I stayed quiet. Not out of anger anymore, but because quiet had become my language. In the market, I found a vendor selling small wooden boxes. I bought one with a carved sun on the lid. For keepsakes, I told myself. I didn't know what I would place inside. Maybe nothing. Maybe something I hadn't yet found. From there I took a bus to the mountains. A woman on board offered me a piece of dried fruit. I didn't ask what it was. I just chewed slowly and smiled. We didn't speak a word, and it was the most peace I'd had in years. In the village, I met a man named Luis who ran a single-room guest house. He showed me the garden, pointed at herbs I didn't recognize, Offered tea without asking if I liked it sweet. I stayed 2 nights. Each morning he greeted me with "Hoy es tuyo." Today is yours. Felt like a blessing. Day 11. I no longer think of their silence. I no longer flinch at my own. In the afternoons, I sat on a stone bench outside the guest house. The sky stretched wide, the kind of blue that swallows time. I wrote lists I didn't need. Flowers I saw, birds I couldn't name, words I didn't know but liked the sound of. The phone stayed off. On day 12, I returned to Mexico City. My old room was waiting, the courtyard still smelling of limes and dust. The clerk smiled. Welcome home. Not the house in Denver with the half-emptied closet and the desk that had taken my place. Not the room off the laundry, stripped of its books and filled with Sarah's office supplies. Not the kitchen where I'd been useful until I wasn't. Here no one asked where I'd been. That evening I checked the phone. One new message. From Tom. You win. I didn't know you had this in you. Sorry. I just always saw you as backup. Turns out, you were something else entirely. I read it twice. Not for the apology, it wasn't one. But for the words he hadn't used. There was no mention of love. No question of how I was. Just a reluctant recognition of a shape they didn't know how to fold back into the old drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't reply. I walked to a rooftop cafe that overlooked the Zocalo, ordered a small coffee and sat at the edge of the terrace. I watched a girl blow bubbles from a plastic wand. She laughed as they floated toward traffic. I watched each one burst. Day 13. I am a woman alone. Not abandoned. Not bitter. Just whole. Later that evening I received an email from Ellie. Subject: Drawing for Grandma. There was a single image attached. A sketch in colored pencil. Me in a wide sun hat, holding a coffee cup, eyes fixed on a point in the distance. She had drawn the outline of a city behind me. No buildings I recognized, but clearly somewhere far from home. At the bottom, in her handwriting. She doesn't wait to be invited anymore. She just goes. I looked at the drawing for a long time. I studied the curve of my back, the way Ellie had drawn my posture. Upright, unbent. There was something in it I hadn't known she'd seen. Something quiet and final. I printed it at the front desk. Folded it carefully. Slipped it inside the carved wooden box. That night I didn't write a journal entry. I whispered instead. I wasn't weak. I just let them believe I needed permission to live. I don't anymore. And I slept through the night. On day 14 I booked a train to Colorado Springs. I didn't tell anyone. The ride was long and winding, through hills that looked like stories I hadn't heard yet. I kept the window open, the air dry and fast against my cheek. In the city I found a rental. Small single-story, just 2 rooms and a patio. Faced west. The afternoon light filled the kitchen. I didn't need more than that. I bought new towels. Plates in my favorite shade of blue. A kettle that whistled gently. A plant I didn't know the name of. The silence there wasn't empty. It was restful. I took walks in the early morning. I wore lipstick I hadn't touched in 15 years. I bought a coat with wide lapels and didn't ask anyone if it looked good. I mailed Ellie a postcard. Picture of the train I took. On the back I wrote, "It's beautiful here. Come visit when you like. Bring your sketchbook." I didn't mention her parents. Didn't ask for their blessing. 1 week later she wrote back. Just one sentence. "You were never backup. You were always the main story." I placed it next to her drawing. Some days I danced in the plaza when no one was watching. I bought churros wrapped in paper and sat on benches warmed by the sun. I said yes when strangers asked if the seat beside me was free. I said no when someone offered help I didn't need. And when people asked if I was new in town, I simply said, "Not new. Just returned." Returned to something older than obligation. Older than roles. Something I thought I had lost but had only misplaced. Myself. Not the version they expected. Not the mother shaped by their needs. Just me. Plain and exact. Peace.